Getting started in Baldur's Gate 3 means you're going to invariably fall down a rabbit hole of which subclass you should be choosing for your first or maybe 8th playthrough of the game of the year. In this video, I'm going to go over my breakdown of all the subclasses in a tier list. Now, this is your first time on my channel. The way I do things here is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos so you can decide if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, the entire tier list I'll be covering is linked in the description. What I will say up front is that the way I'm approaching this tier list is as a pure 12 level class breakdown. Zero consideration here of multiclassing, which would drastically change this list because multiclassing is truly the kind of more superior way to build out a character and more often than not outclasses any 12 pure levels. But we're just kind of talking about the pure merits of that class with as little of a discussion about gear as possible. Also, this list is entirely based off of my anecdotal experience, so please don't feel like you are playing the wrong subclass or anything like that. You can beat the entire game with the Arcane Trickster if you want, without zero issue. Remember, your character is one amongst a group of 4, so you just supplement the weaknesses of one class with the strengths of another. Please play the game how you want. This is a single-player narrative game, so don't listen to any content creator, game publication website, or Reddit for how you play your game. The best subclass in Baldur's Gate 3 is the one you enjoy playing the most. So take a look at the list, see if you agree or disagree, and then just jump ahead to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. I've broken it all up by tier here. That's the entire breakdown of the video though, so if that's all you want to know, then please shut the video down and get back to enjoying the game. Before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. If you need help with any other subject in Baldur's Gate 3, check out my playlist linked below and at the end of the video. Let's get started here on my subclass tier list video for Baldur's Gate 3. So to start us off, we're going to go into the D tier and just pretty much build this from the ground up. And remember, everything in the D tier is not unplayable. It's definitely playable. You can beat the game. You're not going to have a problem. It's just what we're really looking at is how does that subclass stack up to maybe the 2, or depending on, if it's a cleric or a wizard, it's way more than 2. But how does it stack up to the other subclasses that that class offers? And are those is that subclass cool in BG3 compared to, say, D&D 5th edition? Like, we look at the Arcane Trickster. The Arcane Trickster plays just so much better in the 5th edition D&D because of how Mage Hand works, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. So starting us off in D tier is the Wild Magic Barbarian. And with the Wild Magic Barbarian, you do get some interesting situations. And the big thing that's going to be characteristic of both the Wild Magic Barbarian and the Wild Magic Sorcerer is wild magic. And basically this is a feature in which when you go to do a specific something, a lot of random things will occur. And with the Wild Magic Barbarian, a lot of those somethings are usually a bonus action that you have to use. So that kind of, that does mess with your action economy, which I'm not really a fan of. And the way that wild magic works too is that rage instantly causes a randomly rolled wild magic effect. Some of these effects can be activated every subsequent turn as a bonus action. Like I said, that bonus action economy eats away at other things you could possibly do. And I will say that the Wild Magic Barbarian, as far as the wild, when it comes to like compare it to the Wild Sorcerer, it has far more positive than good things, I would say. But I think that overall, there's not a reliable amount of things that you can do. So it results in like kind of like a little bit of a lackluster play style where you're like, well, I can't rely on what I wanted to do with that wild magic ability because it didn't occur. Now, the big thing I think the Wild Magic Barbarian does have going for it is at level 6, it gets the ability to bolster magic, allowing you to recover these spell slots of allies or give them a bonus to attack and ability checks. And that's actually kind of really cool. So as far as a straight 12 levels go into this Barbarian class, I'd much rather choose Berserker or Wildheart. It does have its places as a kind of spell slot battery, but I think better things can be chosen for the Barbarian. Our next class to slide up into this spot is the Trickery Domain Cleric. Now, Cleric is a pretty damn strong class all the way around. And Trickery Domain is what we get for Shadowheart. But with the Trickery Domain, it's a little weird. We get Blessing of the Trickster, which helps at advantage on stealth checks, Invoke Duplicity, which gives your allies advantage on attack rolls against creatures that are around the little duplicity thing you create. But this assumes, again, as far as a pure 12 levels, all the things that you can do are not that awesome. You do get a Divine Strike Poison, but as far as the Cleric goes, you don't really get enough support abilities from this domain that really lend itself to being worth it. I'd rather choose any of the other domains, which give me so much more party utility, so much more personal damage ability, or so much more healing than the trickery domain, which really kind of augments stealthing characters. And you're probably not going to have a whole party of stealthing characters, which you definitely can. That's a pretty cool way to play. But I think that the trickery domain just kind of falls on its ass, unfortunately. Following us up is the Eldritch Knight. Now, the Eldritch Knight is probably, as far as like overall kind of breakdown of character goes, it's one of my favorite. I love an Eldritch Knight, but the Eldritch Knight in Baldur's Gate 3 falls a little flat. We get weapon bond at level 3, which allows us pretty much to throw our weapon or do whatever. It can't be disarmed. But our spellcasting ability is intelligence. So we now need to put points into intelligence for our ability score, which can be a little rough and tumble. We do get abjuration and evocation spells from the wizardry school, which can be pretty cool. But Eldritch Knight needs a multi-class. If you don't multi-class, you just have a lot of kind of lackluster spells and lackluster spell slots. And that's the big problem here. If you were to put all 12 levels into your, what's this thing called? Eldritch Knight, then I think the max level that you get here is something like, I'm looking at another screen, level 2 spell slots, something like that. Maybe level 3, if I can, yeah, just level 2. And that kind of is not the best thing for me. You know, yeah, it's only up to level 2. And I'd rather have much higher level spells by jumping into even just a wizard multi-class with abjuration, which makes the Eldritch Knight stupid strong. Level 10 ability, when you hit a creature with weapon attack, it has a disadvantage on its next saving throw against a spell you cast before the end of your turn. That's kind of fun to kind of work things around, or the way that cantrips work with your war magic. All really cool abilities, but I would just I would even rather go into champion than stick with Eldritch Knight, because I just have such a lackluster spell casting capability. And in that same vein, let's talk about the Way of the Four Elements Monk. Now, the Way of the Four Elements Monk is really cool too. Again, it's funny that some of my favorite versions of some of these classes are the D tier. My personal monk playthrough is a Four Elements Monk. And the Four Elements Monk is actually pretty cool. But the problem is, it just doesn't, as soon as you're out of key points, you're immediately just a open hand monk that doesn't have its bonus actions. So as far as the longevity of the character throughout a prolonged fight, it can be a little rough and tumble, right? You have a lot of ways that you can regain your key points, but you either have to not be in combat, you have to have special items, whatever it is. But you can get some really cool stuff here as far as their abilities go. They get something like Shaping of the Ice, which they just summon an ice cube, a climbable ice cube. It's pretty goddamn cool. And their abilities are, for the most part, just wizard spells that are in a special monk form. Like Sweeping Cinder Strike is just Burning Hands. And they do get better versions of these, but I think that in order for the Way of the Four Elements Monk to kind of really come online, you have to either augment its spellcasting ability or its combat ability with another subclass. So it does require a lot of multi-classing, and it doesn't really stand strong on its own. Bringing us to another class that doesn't stand strong on its own is the Arcane Trickster. Now, I really like the Arcane Trickster too. It's a really cool capability. It's a really cool kind of concept. But the abilities that you get from the Arcane Trickster are very similar to the Eldritch Knight, where you're very limited in the amount of spells you can get access to. I believe it's illusion and enchantment spells. And it's just the same exact issue. You have to now put points into intelligence so that you can get that online for the Arcane Trickster, just like the Eldritch Knight. You're only going to have access all the way up to level 2 spells. And your mage hand is not as good as it is in tabletop. Your mage hand's supposed to get cool abilities, but it doesn't really get them. It lasts longer, that's cool, but it can't do all the many myriad of things that it can do in tabletop like it can here in Baldur's Gate 3, which kind of, again, just kind of sucks. And you don't really get any pure aggressiveness from your abilities. You do get special wizard spells for both the Eldritch Knight and the Arcane Trickster that are outside the two schools' purviews of enchantment or illusion. So you can get like Scorching Ray, but you are also a rogue, or you're also a fighter. So you're going to kind of take away from what you can do as that class to invest in a Scorching Ray ability to do that damage, to get your intelligence up. So the Arcane Trickster requires, again, another class to really feel like you're really doing something with this class. We talked about Wild Magic Barbarian to open this section up. Well, now we're going to have a conversation about the Wild Magic Sorcerer. And the Wild Magic Sorcerer is very fun, and it's very cool because you have such chaos to all of the spells that you're casting. You don't know, are you going to wipe the party? Are you going to turn someone into a rabbit? Or are you going to get a stupid amount of buffs on all of your spells? So you do have some crazy stuff with that. There's only one item in the game that can augment your wild magic, and I think that kind of makes for kind of a little bit of lackluster. The game of the wild magic sorcerer is playing the wild magic sorcerer. Do you explode in healing? Do you get an action surge? Do you fly? Or do you polymorph someone and transform into a beast? It just depends on what's going on. But I think why they put this at D compared to the other two is the other two sorcerer subclasses are just so strong. And on top of it too, I would probably never play Wild Magic in Honor mode, the new Iron Man mode that they added to Baldur's Gate 3, because it just adds way too much variance and too much chaos to a mode that I cannot reload if something happens. So Wild Magic, unfortunately, sits at the bottom. Now, for our next three, they are all of the Wizard school. So we have Enchantment, and we have Conjuration, and we have Illusion. And they all suffer from the same problems. All of the abilities that you get from them on levels like 3, 6, 9, damn that bitch is fine, or whatever the other spells or abilities you get at whatever, they're just very lackluster. Conjuration doesn't make you any better at conjuring or summoning anything. It just makes it so that you get a cool kind of teleport and you have unbreakable concentration on your conjuration spells. God, that's too many shuns, too many nouns. Illusion and Enchantment have a lot of the same things going for it. So there's just not enough of a bonus to take any one of those three schools over the other four schools, or what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools that either do more damage or augment those spells in a good way, or even just better at being a good supplement like Transmutation School. So that's why all three of these sit in D, because they just don't really help. Now, of course, it's still cheaper to scribe any of that respective school's spells as a wizard, but again, I'd rather just choose any of the other 5 schools. So that's our D tier. Let's jump into C tier now. So I think it's kind of easy for people to look at something in a C tier and think, oh God, that's a C tier thing? That's not good. And really, C tier is just performing average. It's doing what it should do. It's fine on its own. Doesn't get that much better. Doesn't really get that much worse. So don't look at anything in this list as like, God, it's just terrible. Not the case. It's just that it performs exactly as it should for the character and that subclass, starting with the College of Valor. Now, the College of Valor differs from the College of Swords, and well, lore for that matter, of course, but the College of Valor is the other martial college for the bard. Now, with the College of Valor, you are going to change your bardic inspirations to become combat inspirations. And now you can buff up your party in combat with those inspirations to help out their combat roles. The College of Swords uses their bardic inspirations to do damage and augment their own personal capabilities. So that's why the College of Valor kind of sits there as this character that is truly a, not necessarily frontline defensive character, but it's more of a melee support character versus the College of Swords is a melee damage dealing character. And the College of Lore is definitely more of a caster of the three colleges. So I think that the abilities of the College of Valor are great. They can be further augmented by a lot of really cool subclass combinations, but I think just playing a College of Valor Bard is a great way to be a strong melee support for the whole entire party and have a lot of cool skills. Not as many as the other ones, but still a pretty overall solid character. The Champion, for the fighter, is another really solid subclass, but it doesn't really have a lot of spice to it, and I think that's the unfortunate thing about it. You do get a lot of really cool abilities with it, but those abilities aren't active things per se that you can really take advantage of, in the sense that you're not going to be using cool spells or abilities or class actions, anything like that. The biggest draw that the Champion has is that as soon as you choose Champion, you can choose to, or you don't choose, it's just part of the Champion. Your crits happen more often. Because standard, whenever you roll your die, right, to critical hit something, it's a 20, right? You roll a die, it's 20, boom, crit hit. With the Champion, it's a 19 or a 20. So you crit more often. And that's the the first thing that you get access to as a champion at level 3, and that's like the biggest draw for them. Now, as they level up, they get remarkable athlete jump and proficiency and stuff like that, but at level 10, they get a whole nother fighting style. So this allows you to go deeper or to spread your combat proficiency, I guess you could say, as a fighter a little bit across the board. That's kind of the big draw of the champion. But outside of that, again, just nothing crazy added to it, but it's still just a solid class as it stands. Definitely above the Eldritch Knight. Now, another monk class that is kind of a little funky is the Way of the Shadow. The Way of the Shadow gets very strong at the end once you get to level 11, but that journey from 1 to 10 is just kind of lackluster. A lot of your abilities are geared towards jumping from shadow to shadow and doing all this shadow stuff, but if you don't want to play a stealth character, then the Way of the Shadow is just completely lost on that style of play. All those abilities, more often than not, require you to be obscured, or they have the ability to make you obscured. So it's okay. At level 11, you can do a really cool, like, psychic damage backstab, more or less. That's awesome. But to suffer through 10 levels of it is not going to be the most fun for a lot of players, especially if they don't want to play a monk that has to kind of be in the shadows for a lot of its capabilities. You're better off just playing open hand monk, which is stupid strong. Now, the transmutation school for the wizard is not one I would take for an active character. I would take, again, any of the other 4 wizard schools, which really focus on the spellcasting portion of it. Now, why transmutation, though, is above these other 3 is because you should put a character in your camp that has transmutation school and also focus on medicine, because then you can brew tons of potions. Transmutation has an ability that on a successful medicine check, it doesn't double, it makes an additional potion whenever you use the potion creation alchemy screen. So this allows you to create a ton of potions, especially in honor mode, where those potions are really going to help you out. And lastly, we have the Oath of Devotion, which is just really kind of the most boring, I guess you could say, of the oaths of the paladin. It's just kind of there. It does some light damage or radiant damage. It just doesn't have as much going for it as the rest of the oaths, and the spells you get from Oath of Devotion are spells you just kind of get as a paladin anyway. So it doesn't really stand out to me versus the other oaths, which give you so much more fun and character as you're playing through the class of paladin to really feel awesome. Also, the Oath of Devotion, I think, is probably the most limiting of the oaths as far as your play style. Remember, as a paladin, if you break your oath, you become an oath breaker. And if you didn't want to do that, you now have to pay gold to resew your oath, and that amount goes up. Devotion is, if you're not playing a lawful good paladin, then you're not playing an Oath of Devotion paladin. So if you don't want to play that way, it's probably going to be the one that puts you the most on the rails and hinders you from any other style of play. Now, as we move into B tier, we're going to start to have a good power spike to a lot of our classes. Starting with the nature domain, probably the first domain outside of trickery we've talked about with the cleric. And the nature domain is a lot of fun because you can have a lot of damage types out from this domain. So you get Divine Strike Elemental Fury at 8, allowing you to go do cold, fire, or lightning damage. You can also mitigate acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage that is done to you. So when you or an ally gets hit with that type of damage, you can have it. So you basically get a free resistance to it, which is really cool. It's just a channel divinity action, unfortunately. But a lot of the spells that you get, like Bark Skin, Spike Growth, which is really, really good, Insect Plague, Wall of Stone, they're all really awesome on top of the already great kit of the cleric. You also get heavy armor proficiency here, which is really, really lovely. Now, for our first druid to talk about, we have the Circle of the Land. And this is pretty much just a standard caster of a druid. You get access to all the druid spells that you get access to. You do have access to the ability to take on a wild form, which is great. But the cool thing about Circle of the Land is that you choose a specific land type, Arctic coast, desert, forest, blah, 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 blah. And it gives you 2 spells from that land. And this is basically just a really solid druid caster. I think it's a really good character, a really strong wisdom blaster, as it were, which is just pretty much a ranged spellcasting character. As far as it compares to the other 2 druid subclasses, it's the quote-unquote weakest, but it's still really, really good because you're going to have access to a wide range of spells that are really going to kind of fit into how you build out your party, which is what I really like about the Circle of the Land. As your character progresses at 3, 5, 7, and 9, you choose one of those land items to get the 2 spells that correspond to it. So this character evolves very dynamically according to what your other party members are doing, which I really, really like. Now, first ranger to talk about is the hunter. And the hunter is the weakest, again, of the 3 ranger classes, but it's still really good because you can specialize the hunter to a specific type of damage. Now specific type of target, I guess is probably a better way to put it. This shows a bow and arrow, but you're not going to be using a bow and arrow. I mean, you don't have to. You can just use a great weapon if you want, or 2 weapons if you want, whatever you want to do as a ranger, which is really kind of cool here. But you can focus on hitting targets that are large or bigger, or hitting multiple targets, or hitting something that's already been taken damage, or getting some cool defensive capabilities for advantage on saving throws against frightened. You get a cool whirlwind attack, which is an AoE melee, or a cool volley ability, which is AoE range. It does take level 11 though for the hunter to really feel good. The hunter though is kind of in the same breadth of the champion, but the hunter is more active than the champion as far as its buffs. The champion is just a better fighter. The hunter is just a better ranger. It's just kind of the best way to look at those 2 things, but the hunter has active things that can contribute to winning things as you progress through the game. Next up is the Warlock with Archfey. Now, I really actually like Archfey. I just think that Fiend and Great Old One are better, because Archfey gets an ability called Fey Presence, where you can either charm or frighten everything around you, and it's foe specific. It's not creature specific, meaning it won't hit your allies, which is cool. And the Archfey is geared more towards crowd control. You've got Calm Emotions, you've got Fairy Fire, you've got Sleep, Blink, Greater Invisibility, Dominate Beast, and Dominate Person, stuff like that. But I find that the already great kit of Warlock spells and the spells that the Fiend and the Great Old One offer me are just better. And the other things that I get at certain breakpoints, level 1, 6, and 10 for the Archfey, are just better on Fiend and the Great Old One. Beguiling Defense allows me to not be charmed, which is okay. I get basically a free Misty Step invisible combo, which is, again, okay. The only thing I like is Fey Presence at level 1, which is the Charm and Frighten. So I'd much rather go with a different Warlock, but it's still not a bad Warlock by comparison. Assassin here is our next one, and I think a lot of people are going to see Assassin and go, why is that a B tier? It's a really good subclass, and it is. But I think the thing that makes Rogue interesting is Rogue is very front-loaded. Everything that's great about Rogue happens at level like 2 and 3. And then the Rogue gets stronger every odd number of levels because it adds more damage to its sneak attack. The Assassin gets all of its abilities at level 3, just like the Thief does. But the Assassin, if you don't have a lot of good game presence, or you're not very good at sneaking around and figuring out how to trigger surprise on people, then the Assassin's going to be really frustrating for you. You're not going to feel like a strong character. You're going to feel kind of like a weak character. I even debated putting this into C. The Assassin works really well as a combo with the Gloomstalker Ranger, but I think that the Assassin requires you as the player to have a lot of control on what happens in your game. And if you're brand new to the game, this can really hinder your playstyle. So I put Assassin at B here because although it does a lot of really good damage and it really is strong, it requires you to have a certain level of expertise of what you're going into. Our last one for B is the Oath of Vengeance for a Paladin. Now, Oath of Vengeance is my personal favorite oath, I think. It has a really cool ability called Vow of Enmity so that you gain advantage on attack rolls against an enemy. So you pretty much always just dropping the hammer on them. And the other abilities they get are okay. The Oath spells, I'm not a huge fan of. Bane, Hunter's Mark, those are great abilities, but they do require concentration. So you are already stacked to the gills as a Paladin with a ton of concentration abilities. And the other Oath abilities that I have access to, it kind of makes it really cramped up for this class. You do get really cool things like Relentless Avenger, so you can have really fun opportunity attack situations, and you get Haste at level 9, which is a really good ability. I'd rather use that as a concentration ability than, say, Bane or Hunter's Mark. So the Oath of Vengeance is great. You do get all the standard stuff you would as a Paladin, right? Like your Aura of Courage and whatnot, and help out with defense around you. But I think that the other two Paladin oaths we're about to talk about are overall better for either outright damage or outright party support and damage as well because of the other capabilities they have as access to their Oath spells. The one thing too I will say about Oath of Vengeance before we conclude this section is that Oath of Vengeance is probably the loosest of the three when it comes to the oaths, and it is worth noting as a big portion of the Paladin class is dealing with that oath. I talked about an Oath of Devotion, but Oath of Vengeance is kind of ends justify the means. You know, you'll do the little evil for the bigger good. And you kind of got to be, that little evil is got to be kind of on a gray area. It's kind of a little funky there, but that's our B tier. Let's jump up to A now. All right, on to A tier. And I've made things a little bit bigger for us because this is a big tier. So to start us off is our Barbarians, both Berserker and Wildheart. And I almost put Wildheart into S tier. But the big thing with your Barbarian is if you choose Tavern Brawler and you use throwing weapons, then you double your strength modifier, which is huge. But if you don't want to do that, as far as just straight, hey, I've got a big old two-handed weapon, I'm going to go to town on things, the Barbarian, Berserker, and Wildheart are really, really good. Barbarian Berserker is kind of like Champion and Hunter. You're just better at being a Barbarian. But the Wildheart is really strong as well because you can choose all of the different Wildhearts to specialize into. So if you go into, say, the Bear Wildheart, you are a Barbarian that now has physical resistance. So that's bludgeoning, slashing, piercing. You take half damage from them and you get a heal. Or you can go into Eagle, or you can go into Elk and get a special charge. So the Wildheart, I think, is really cool because it allows you to supplement the character into different directions based off of how your party is going, which it's my preferred Barbarian for Karlach. I have her as a Wildheart Barbarian with Champion. Well, actually, I think I set her into Battlemaster too. But Berserker, like I said, if you just want someone who's 12 levels of just really strong-ass Barbarian, then there you go. It's a Berserker. You're just going to do more damage, and you get Frenzied Strike, which is really fun. So it just depends upon what kind of character you want out of your Barbarian. Now, outside of that, we now have our College of Swords. So College of Swords, like I said before, this is the style of Bard that is focused on using your Bardic Inspirations to do single target damage. You're using all of the many cool things about the Bard and turning it into a lot of either increased AC for yourself, so more armor class, or you're going to do more damage, or you're going to push something, are you going to attack multiple targets? This is the kind of class that allows this Bard to really kind of shine as a melee combatant. I think College of Swords is not in the standard core rulebook 5th edition. I don't know. I haven't played on tabletop. You just get medium armor and scimitars as your proficiency, but having all those special slashes and defensive slashes are really, really cool to help amp up your capabilities as a Bard. And it really is really a lot of cool damage too, and a lot of really cool functionality for the character that makes it really, really fun, and I think kind of stands above the College of Valor. Our next up here is the other, or another one of our druids. If I can find it. Aha, Circle of the Moon. So this is your shapeshifter. If you want to be a better shapeshifter, this is the way to go. And shapeshifters just get better and better and better as you go through the game. They get the Owlbear, which is stupid strong at like level 6. They get really good ones all the way up to level 11, where they can turn into just a whole bunch of different things. And now, as of the most recent patch, patch 5, you can choose Tavern Brawler, which will double your strength modifier on Circle of the Moon, making your druid do a ton of damage in close combat. So just keep in mind, though, if you want to cast any spells, you have to do them before you go into wild form. And if you cast any concentration spells, they will persist once you go into wild form. So it's a really, really strong druid that just gets better as they level up. And it's a very fun and thematic one. Now, our next two are both Paladins, the Oath of Ancients and the Oathbreaker. Now, the Oathbreaker just outright does more damage at level 7 because it gets Aura of Hate. It's just a flat damage modifier to your melee weapon attacks equal to your charisma modifier. It's huge. And on top of it, you can summon up undead. You get Darkness, which is a really good ability, Hellish Rebuke. You can frighten things. So you have a lot of really cool abilities, and you can add your charisma modifier to, you can do damage to a target with a 1d4 plus your charisma modifier. So they just take a ton of damage each turn, and attack rolls against it have advantage. That's a really, really huge damage spike to you with your Channel Oath. Now, the Oath of the Ancients, I said the Oath of Vengeance is my favorite, but if I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, Oath of the Ancients is probably the one I like the most as far as like a single strongest oath, because I think dealing with the oath itself is not as hard as the other two. Oathbreaker, of course, you don't have an oath to deal with anymore, right? But I like Aura of Warding that it gets at level 7, which is resistance to damage from spells. So you take half damage from them within 10 meters of the guy. You get Misty Step, you get Moonbeam, very strong capabilities here. And Nature's Wrath is really cool. Invoke Primeval Forces to restrain an enemy. Attacks on restrained enemies have advantage. And they have my favorite Channel Oath ability, Healing Radiance, which is a huge AoE heal that heals twice. So it does it immediately and then the next turn. So it's proficiency bonus, which is going to be at max level 4, plus your paladin level, in this case it's 12, plus your charisma modifier, which is probably going to be around 3, right? So that's like 19 points of health on one turn, then 19 points the next turn, just automatically does it. So that's why I really, really like this. It just offers a lot of really strong party utility and a lot of damage from Moonbeam. Moonbeam's a really great ability. Beastmaster here, up in A tier as well for Ranger, because your pets get really strong at level 11. They get really, really strong. They have a little bit of a fall off point though, from like level 8 to level 11, because they don't get extra attack until level 11. But the Beastmaster affords you all the really cool capabilities of a Ranger. You get stuff like spike growth and all that fun action, and then you get a bunch of really badass beasts to take advantage of. The bear can summon another bear. The raven can blind things and cast darkness wherever it lands. There's a lot of really cool things from the Beastmaster, and it's my personal Ranger that I've played in my playthrough. I love my Beastmaster Ranger. It's one of my favorite classes in the whole game. Next is our wizard schools here with Necromancy and Evocation. Necromancy allows me to have better animate dead, basically. I'm going to get one more, not charge, but if I cast level 6 animate dead, it's usually 3 dead that I can summon. With Necromancy School, it's now 4. So it allows me to get more undead on the table. I can augment them a little bit better. I mean, Necromancy and Spore Druid in conjunction are really fun. But also at level 6 is kind of where you get the most out of this, because you also can buff those undead. They come up with more hit points that are equal to your wizard level, and your proficiency bonus is added to their damage, which allows for some pretty nice crunchy undead at your beck and call. Now, Evocation is here up at tier A, because I think it's just the go-to for anyone who's brand new to playing a wizard and doesn't want to really kind of get bogged down with maybe the nuance. It just allows it so if you cast an AoE spell, it will not hurt your companions. That alone makes it worth it. And then at level 10, you add your intelligence modifier to any evocation spells in the damage roll department. So that makes it even better too. It's just a really, really strong school that is just very plug and play. You choose it, you don't have to worry about anything. Now all your spells are not going to hurt your friends, and they're going to do more damage. Well, all your damage spells at least. So that's why I really like that. Into A tier, we have Thief. Remember I said this is not a multi-class kind of dependent tier list. We're just looking at them on their individual merits. Thief, if we're talking multi-class, is like an S++ tier, because it adds bonus action. And that is what's so crucial. It allows for better action economy within your turn. And that is nice. You can do more things with that bonus action, either attack with your offhand weapon if you're doing that, or do whatever it is. Thief is great. The problem is, though, just like Assassin, all the great things about Rogue happen up front. At level 3, you get your bonus action and you get resistance to falling damage. Then at level 9, you get Supreme Sneak, where if you sneak around, you become invisible. Okay, whatever. So it's kind of the lackluster thing about Thief and why it's not an S tier. It's great to have that additional bonus action, but there are just definitely things that I'd rather have an S tier that really allow me to manipulate the game a little bit better. Now, outside of those, we now have our Storm Sorcerer from our, Sorcerer. And Storm Sorcerer is really fun because it allows us to fly whenever we cast a level 1 spell or higher. It doesn't need to be a storm spell. And we do extra AoE thunder or lightning damage to enemies within 20 feet whenever we cast a lightning or damage or thunder dealing damage spell. Those are really cool. And we get a ton of storm spells: Thunder Wave, Gust of Wind, Sleet Storm, Call Lightning, all awesome. Unfortunately, though, if we're talking about lightning and or thunder damage and trying to do raw amounts of them, the Draconic Bloodline does it better. The Storm Sorcery just allows me a lot of mobility with fly, a lot of really cool AoE capabilities with Heart of the Storm, Lightning, and Thunder, the two ones that do the 20-foot damage ability. And I have extra damage that I can do with all that. I just really like the amount of damage I can do with Storm Sorcerer, but if I'm trying to single target nuke something down, Draconic Bloodline really allows me to amp that up without costing me anything, and we'll talk about that in S tier. And the last thing to talk about in A tier is I had to look at my reference sheet, Knowledge Domain, Life Domain, and War Domain. Why all three of these are here is that the Knowledge Domain is going to give me something really important. I get a proficiency in tons of different skills. So if I have a character that I want to really be as kind of a jack of all trades, Knowledge Domain really fits that. I can use a proficiency in all these skills as a channel divinity capability, which is really, really nice. And in addition to that too, I have just more proficiency as a Knowledge Domain in general. They just get, right off the bat, they get a ton more proficiency that they can tap into, which I really like. The Knowledge Domain Cleric is not necessarily like this crazy combatant, but they get Calm Emotions, Hold Person, which is very good. They take a little time to get going, but at level 8, they add their Wisdom modifier to the damage they deal with Cleric cantrips. So that's a nice little bit of damage increase there. They do get Dominate Person and Telekinesis. So they have a lot of more crowd control centric stuff, but basically having them as a character that can have proficiency on damn near anything that they need is a really cool way to get through maybe picking a lock, conversation, whatever it is. Life Domain Cleric is my go-to healer. It just does such a huge amount of healing. It gets heavy armor. It's just right there in the thick of it, and I don't have to worry about a damn thing. War Domain Cleric is a really cool way to add a lot of combat capability to not just the cleric itself, but also to the entire party, which is probably my favorite thing about this. The War Domain Cleric will get an ability called Guided Strike, where it gains +10 bonus to your attack roll, but I can actually extend that out to the party and have them get that bonus instead, which is really, really cool. And with the War Priest charge, which is something the Domain Cleric, the War Cleric gets, they can just have more attacks. They attack with their primary action, and then they can use this War Priest extra attack to attack again. This is why the War Domain is really good if you multi-class this in with a combat character, because you get so many attacks. And they get Flame Strike, which is really damn good. Freedom of Movement, Stone Skin, Spirit Guardians, which is an amazing, amazing spell, which is probably one of the best things about them. But this is your A tier class. Can't go wrong with anything in this entire tier. I lied, we're not done with A tier because the Fiend goes here. And the Fiend for our Warlock is a very good subclass because we get access to a lot of raw temp hit points, which is good, but I think the problem with it is it falls off by the latter portions of the game because you can get temp hit points from so many other sources. It is Charisma modifier plus Warlock level, so at max level this will probably be somewhere around, let's just say 15 plus, which is a lot. But if you have temp hit points from something else, it won't overwrite each other. What I mean by that is the source of the temp hit points, its max amount is what is kind of paramount, right? So if you have something that says, oh, it's going to give me 15, and then something else wants to give me 7, I don't get 22. I just get the 15. And if that 15 is dropped to 8, then I still get that, it stays that 15 one until something has a higher amount of temp hit points. So it can be a little lackluster for me. And Dark One's Own Luck is an ability to get level 6 where you can call on your patron to change your fate and add 1d10 to an ability check, recharge every short rest. I just don't like that that's an every short rest thing. And Fiendish Resistance at level 10 is where I choose a damage type and get resistance to it. And I can swap that out every short rest, which is cool and all, but I like a lot of the things I get from Great Old One. It's all really strong capabilities. Having Flame Strike 2 is really good. Cone of Cold, Wall of Fire, Fire Shield, those are all really strong spells that you get from the Fiend. I just like what the Great Old One affords me as far as a lot of the passives or reactives from Great Old One over the Fiend. And I think that that's this kind of dealer's choice. I think a lot of people would probably say, oh no, Fiend is S tier versus Goo, or as it's called, the Great Old One. But it's really going to come down to you and what kind of cleric or warlock you want. But now we're in S tier. The one that you can see everything on the bottom here is going up into that category, but it's just going to be in whatever order I want to talk about it. Starting with the College of Lore. Bard's my favorite class in D&D, so I'm prejudiced here, or biased here. Prejudice is not the word. I am biased here. College of Lore is my favorite Bard because you get access to like damn near everything in the game. You get magical secrets at level 6 and at level 10. You get skill proficiency, you get skill expertise. You can basically have a skill proficiency and or expertise in damn near everything in the game. So nothing is really closed to you as a College of Lore Bard. Maybe you can't be the best melee combatant, sure, but you get access to such a disgusting amount of spells that it makes you kind of a real strong powerhouse. And with that too, you're going to be able to converse your way through anything in the game. And then after that, you're going to be able to spell cast anything down that you have to. I think the College of Lore Bard is so strong on its own, and it augments anything I want to jump into as a multi-class even better. Into our Cleric, we have the Tempest and the Light Domain. Both are just so goddamn strong on their own. I think what I like, my Shadowheart is a Light Domain Cleric, but the Tempest Domain Cleric is also very strong. And the Tempest Domain Cleric has an ability called Wrath of the Storm. Using a reaction, strike back at an attacking creature, potentially dealing lightning or thundering damage. If they fail a dex throw or otherwise take half damage, which is a really cool ability. So it does 2d8 lightning or thunder. But at level 2, they get Destructive Wrath, where I will do the max damage of a little thunder or lightning spell. Because all spells will say, oh, it does, 1d8 or 2d8, whatever it is, types of damage, right? Nope. Destructive Wrath, I'm just doing the max damage of that spell. So this is why the Tempest Domain Cleric for me is really strong. And all you have to do is make something wet, and then they will be vulnerable to both thunder and lightning damage. They will take double that damage. This goes the same for Storm Sorcerer. So this allows you a ton of damage potential as the Tempest Domain Cleric. And they get a ton of ways to access that. They get Thunder Wave, Shatter, Call of Lightning, or just Call Lightning. Wow. Divine Strike, Tempest. They get Destructive Wave, which is a huge capability. When you deal thunder or lightning damage to a creature that is large or larger, you can also push it with their Thunderbolt Strike ability. So they have so many ways to leverage the domain's strengths, which I think is what makes them really stand out compared to a lot of the other domains. And the same can be said here for Light Domain, which has just tons of radiant damage. And in addition to that, they have Warding Flare. So Warding Flare allows me to have basically impose disadvantage on an attack roll against me. But eventually I get improved Warding Flare at 6, so I can have an ally take advantage of that. And that's just a reaction. It doesn't cost me anything. So having these capabilities on Light Domain Cleric is really strong, in addition to just having really strong spells as a whole. And I think that's probably the big thing, right? Light Domain Cleric also gets that Destructive Wave capability, but they get Guardian of Faith, Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, Fireball, just a lot of really damn good abilities. And they also get Radiance of Dawn. So they basically, it's 2d10 plus character level radiant damage. So 2d10 plus 12 at max level, right? Explodes radiant damage in like a 30, 60 foot, whatever radius around them. And it's just a ton of really good damage, and it's reliable damage because not everything is weak to radiant. And if you're in Act 2, they're actually probably taking double damage from radiant. So it's just such a quote unquote blaster cleric character. Next up is the Battle Master, which is really strong. It's just really, really damn strong. They use their battle maneuvers to do a whole ton of supplemental things as a fighter. It's why they're the S tier fighter, because they're strong on their own and they're strong with other classes. You can take 3 levels into a Battle Master in any other melee class and have a class that now has a ton of utility. They can disarm something, they can knock them prone, they can push them, they can weaponize their reaction. So if something misses them, they do damage and just skull fuck them back. I don't know why I went with that descriptor, but I'm sticking with it. The Battle Master is just such a fun one. You can even get a heal out of this. It's not a great one, but you get Rally and you can heal things, give temp hit points. It's a really, 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 really strong fighter class. Outside of that, we have the next one is Circle of the Spores, which is probably the true necromancer of the game. I'm not going to lie. You get an ability as a druid with the Circle of the Spores at level 6, where you can basically make a bunch of fungal zombies like you're watching The Last of Us. And you can match this in conjunction with the necromancy school, and you can have just a legion of undead trailing behind you. The Circle of the Spores is really cool. You can do a lot of AoE necrotic damage. You get a ton of temp hit points, a ton of temp hit points. So you yourself are just very tanky and you can absorb a lot of damage. You can still go into wild shape, but you're going to use those wild shape forms for charges for something else. And you still have access to all of these standard druid spells plus Circle of the Spore spells, which are more necromancy or necrotic damage based. It's just such a strong class. And originally people didn't really like it. They're like, this feels funky. But once we've really kind of sat it down with the classes and really kind of like sunk into it with BG3, there's so many fun ways you can really abuse and have a lot of fun with this class. Way of the Open Hand is a disgusting monk class that you can do so much damage with. You can go Tavern Brawler and do a ton of damage. You can skip that and just go with your Dexterity, Wisdom, standard monk build and do a ton of damage, because your primary action will do damage with your punches, which will then give you an unarmed attack as your bonus action, or the Way of the Hand has a bunch of bonus action abilities to either stun things, knock them prone, push them back, a bunch of stuff to do. And it eventually gets the ability to turn all of its punches into either radiant, necrotic, or psychic damage. So you just have such a really cool kit of abilities as the Way of the Open Hand, and you're very tanky and very mobile for a monk. You're going to have a lot of abilities that allow you to move very quickly. You can throw ranged things back at things. That's a monk thing in general. But the monk itself is far tankier than you would think for someone that's just not wearing any armor at all in the game. Gloomstalker, if I had to think of like the one class that probably has the most raw damage potential without taking stuff like Tavern Brawler and kind of abusing that ability, it might be the Gloomstalker. Because the Gloomstalker can just really go to town with things. Right out the gate, as soon as you get Gloomstalker at level 3, you get an ability that allows you to just have a free ranged or melee attack right at the start of combat. So depending on how your character is set up, like if you have dual wielding weapons or dual wielding crossbows, your primary action will do damage, your bonus action will do damage, and then you get your special action, which will be either ranged or melee, whichever you want, that does damage. And you can cast spells, and you can stalk around, and you can just have a lot of fun as the Gloomstalker. It's truly probably the real assassin of the game. It's why the Gloomstalker assassin is probably the strongest single multi-class character as far as like a non-Tavern Brawler, just raw damage output. It's such a good class. Next is our Draconic Bloodline. Now, I said that the Storm Sorcerer is really good, right? But I said the Draconic Bloodline does a lot of what the Draconic Sorcerer Draconic Bloodline does a lot of what the Storm Sorcerer can do, but a little bit better. And that's why, and the reason behind that is, A, you're going to get 1 more hit point per level. So it gives you more health. B, you get Draconic Resilience, which is going to set your armor class to 13 if you aren't wearing armor. So if you're just talking pure 12 levels into Draconic Bloodline, that's really great. But now you get to choose an element or a Draconic Ancestry. So, red for fire, or black is acid, or blue is lightning, whatever it is. That's going to grant you a spell, which is cool. You can get like Armor of Agathis, which is a warlock spell. But let's say now I want to focus on lightning. So I'm going to go blue, which gives me Witch Bolt. Now at level 6, this is just a passive capability. Doesn't cost me anything to do this. My charisma modifier is just added to my damage all the time. So I just have a flat damage increase regardless of any situation. It's just that specific elemental affinity to that specific damage type. So if I'm doing lightning damage as a Draconic Bloodline, I have a flat bonus to the damage from my charisma modifier, which I like more than the Storm Sorcery, which feels a little bit more wonky. So I just like that flat damage bonus. Also, I have a resistance to it too, and at level 11 I can fly, so it's really cool. If you play Neverwinter Nights too, you sprout dragon wings, but you don't in this game, damn it. Draconic Bloodline definitely is up there, and it's also really just cool looking. Damn, do I not love it? And I'm biased too. Again, I like Draconic Bloodline. It's my favorite sorcerer subclass. So you might swap these two. So just kind of think of those things as you're looking through this whole entire thing. Great old one coming up here as our go-to for the Warlock. And this comes down to the ability Mortal Reminder. When you land a crit hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby creatures must succeed a Wisdom saving throw or become frightened. And Frighten's great. It locks things down. They can't do much at all with it. The spells that the goo offers, great old one, Dissonant Whispers, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Detect Thoughts, Phantasmal Force, not as bad, but Bestow Curse, Slow, Dominate Beast is all right, but Ivard's Black Tentacles, Dominate Person, those are all great things. And at level 6, you get Entropic Ward, impose disadvantage on an attack roll against you. If the attack misses, you gain advantage on your next attack roll. So if you're going Pact of the Blade, great old one, you can really kind of have a lot of fun here with Entropic Ward, allowing you to get a lot of cool damage. That does require a short rest to recharge, but it's a nice capability. You do get Psychic Resistance, which is lovely too. And when you take psychic damage, your attacker takes the same amount of damage. So this allows you to kind of have a lot of good psychic things. You're not going to experience a ton of psychic damage until the very end of the game or at portions of the game in between. Maybe you deal with Mind Flayers or Gith, but psychic damage it's a very big amount of damage you deal with, but you won't deal with it in lots of occurrences, I guess I could say. Not like fire. You deal with fire like all the time. And to round us off is the Abjuration and Divination schools for the that thing called that wizard. And the reason these are so good is that Abjuration allows you to become a super tanky wizard, which is a lot of fun actually. It has an ability that every time you cast an Abjuration spell, you get a protective ward that basically absorbs damage. So each time you cast an Abjuration spell, the intensity of the ward increases by the amount of the spell's level up to a maximum of 2x your wizard level, so 24. Each time you take damage, the ward blocks an amount of damage equal to its intensity, and the intensity is decreased by 1. So at max level, it'll be 24, right? If I take 25 damage, it mitigates 24 of those 25 points of damage, and the intensity goes from 24 to 23. If I take 25 damage again, it mitigates 23 of that 25 damage, and the intensity goes to 22. So it actually allows for a ton of damage reduction for the character. And the coolest thing about it is you can project that ward at level 6 onto another character in the party. And it has the same exact effect. And that is really, really sick. It is really, really sick. At level 10, you get each time you take a short rest, the intensity of your arcane ward increases by an amount equal to your wizard level. So you short rest and you just get that much ward granted to your character. So at level 12, we would short rest and get 12 intensity. You can really keep that thing going, and it gives you just such a really cool amount of party utility and personal defense that you can afford across the entire table. And lastly is Divination. And Divination is kind of sits in the park with Assassin, where you do need to kind of have a little bit of presence of mind about the game. But I think it's just such a strong ability. Basically, you get these portent dice, and the portent dice allow you to have static rolls in the bank. They refresh every short rest, and I think then eventually every long rest. It starts off at every long rest. But the portent die are pre-rolled die. And so it's like a 12, a 20, and then a 15. And you just have them in your back pocket. And you can say, okay, I failed that die roll of whatever it was, but I needed a 15 to succeed. Just so happens I've got a 15 in my back pocket. I can swap those two out. And that is a really, 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 really big bonus here. You get more of those as you kind of go through the leveling of this character. You get Dark Vision and See Invisibility, which are huge. But I mean, you could just go 6 levels into Divination School and get a ton of benefit just from that ability. It's just any kind of time you can manipulate dice in a strong favor to yourself, it's huge. But it's not just simply your rolls, it's the enemies too. So that's why those low rolls, like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, are beneficial to you because you can swap them out for whatever the enemy rolls. So that is our S tier. That is everything put together. Let's talk it all out. So here is our entire tier list, I guess you could say. And I know that some of these would probably swap around for you guys. Like I said, maybe you're going to do this and that, or maybe this goes up here and that goes down here. And that's totally fine. Please play this game how you want, not how I tell you to play. What I'm really kind of going through here too, and again, these are pure classes. I think very few people are going to play their class as a pure class. Personally, the only person in my party that is a pure class is my light domain Shadowheart. Everyone else is some mix of something. And I think that every single one of these is still strong in its own merit. I think playing a Wild Magic Sorcerer is a fuckload of fun. I would play it probably over a Battlemaster Fighter, which even though it's a stronger, better quote unquote character, it's a more wild and fun and crazy character that I get a ton of crazy playability out of. Maybe every single experience with the Battlemaster is the same. Everything with the Wild Magic Sorcerer is going to be different. So when you take a look at these classes, don't think of them as this is the best and this is the worst. Think of them as this stands on its own as a really strong character that can do what it's meant to do without anything else. Whereas everything at the bottom needs a supplementation of other characters, maybe gear or items, to really get itself going or get off. Get off. Oh God, I said it again. To really get itself getting a lot of momentum to really help you take part in the game. So think of that as the way you should look at this tier list, and not just, if you don't take College of Lore, you're wrong. Don't take College of Valor. It's not that way, man. It's just, please have fun with this game. Here's how I've broken this up. Here's their strengths and here's their weaknesses. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Maybe you think the Oath of Devotion is the true S tier. Everything else is a lie. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section as always. And maybe help encourage people. They say, hey, I'm really struggling to get my Circle of the Spores Druid Online help. If you see someone in the comments with a comment like that, jump in, help out. Tell them what you've done to help out with your Circle of the Spores. I've got videos on it, but sometimes it helps just to kind of get that different perspective or different viewpoint on something to really kind of get you clicking in the right direction. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.